Oh, man. Okay. All right. I'm done with television. I apologize for the false start. Lots of false starts tonight. We'll get to Laramie Tunsil later. But I didn't realize the stream, we had the comments live, so I apologize to those of you who are waiting. That was, boy, that it was a tale of two halves in a lot of ways. I think that from the time that Tyreek Stevenson poked Nico Collins in the eye in the first half, I thought, well, that's it. This is over. Nico's going off. Nico ends up with well over 100 yards receiving and was just a machine, looked like an unstoppable beast. But then when Joe Mixon got hurt, that's when everything started to slide the other way. I think for both teams, even though the Texans continued to physically handle the Bears, at least the Texans defense was physically handling the Bears offense. Joe Mixon gets injured, then you have Tank Dell. I don't. Maybe you guys were watching on TV, and I watched the second half on TV. I was in person for the first half. I'm at the KHOU web studio right now, but I can't get the lighting working. That's why I look like the crypt keeper. So it's been a long day, and that game was made absurdly and ridiculously long by there being 20 plus penalties. The average number of penalties is in an NFL game is 12. The Texans did that on their own. But before I get into some of the negatives about the sloppiness of it, there's Nico. There's the plays that CJ did make under duress and with a faltering offensive line in front of him without much support from the rushing attack today. But defensively, I mean, the 7 sacks, and I will credit multiple numbers of you who told me, Seth, you're crazy. They need to blitz the hell out of this rookie, make him uncomfortable. I was like, nah, take it easy. That should make the rookie work for it. D'Amico blitzed the hell out of Caleb Williams. And I'll say this. I tweeted this out, and I didn't even mean it to sound all that snarky, but it did. Caleb Williams does have genuinely some of the most electrifyingly athletic and dazzling sacks and interceptions that I've ever seen. It was brilliant. The way he would spin his way out of trouble, sidestep, dart forward, and then throw an ill-advised interception or 3, one called back because of a very valid Henry To'oTo'o penalty. But the penalties hit on both sides. Look, Laramie Tunsil he's humming along at a 2 false start per game clip right now. The Henry To'oTo'o one was legitimate. The Kalen Bullock one was obviously legitimate. So those are ones that, the Bullock interception just paved the way for that score. You've got the To'oTo'o defensive holding that negated the interception. Didn't ultimately hurt them on that drive because nobody was scoring points really in the second half. That was the sloppiness of that, the ineptitude of the pass protection, and the thing that happened today too many times, I think, was that it wasn't just one guy getting beat. If one guy gets beat, then so be it. CJ can dodge that or get rid of the ball or whatever. But there were too many times, especially in the second half, where I think they were waiting for stuff to develop downfield. And then all of a sudden, CJ's just got a tidal wave pouring into his lap. And he only got sacked 3 times, but it felt like more. Did it not? Did it not feel like more? So I keep trying to remember they're 2-0. And because we're greedy and because the offense could be scoring more prolifically than they did tonight versus a very, very good Bears defense. Don't get me wrong. Those guys are good. CJ got lucky on the one interception that Eberflus idiotically challenged. I don't know why he made either of those challenges other than the one time to try to give them a time to, he called the timeout at the end of the half there, which wasn't officially a challenge, ended up being a smart thing. But okay, why doesn't Ryans work the refs? You know what? That's a catch more flies with honey than you do with vinegar. I think sometimes. I played for Tom Coughlin, who I think the refs absolutely despised and loathed and had it in for him half the time because Coughlin would just destroy them. I think he works them in his own way. What were the Texans penalties? And I'm honestly asking this. What were the Texans penalties that you thought were unjust? Because everyone that I can think of, I can't remember that many, but off the top of my head, Titus Howard hands to the face, yes. Laramie Tunsil false starts, yes. Now I'm mixing up into last week. Nico Collins had a hold last week. The defensive penalties, I thought those were all fair. Well, Nico, yeah. Look, Tyreek Stevenson pokes him in the eye or on the bridge of the nose, but Nico responds, and that's a law of the That's an immutable law of the universe and science and physics and God is that he who retaliates will get punished. Elshai got away with one though. They need to get the tight ends more involved, as you saw at the end there. Now, I think that's the one thing that would have made me feel really good about everything is if they had actually scored on that drive where Cam Akers fumbled at the end, because that was a nice drive. They were using the run. They got Dalton Schultz into the mix. Did you see Dalton with the ball security as he barreled towards the goal line? But then Cam Akers fumbles, and it's all for naught. That did feel at that point as the fourth quarter went on. I think Collinsworth was overstating a little bit how the Texans were starting to wear down the Bears, because at that point in the game, I remember looking down, and when Collinsworth said that, both teams had 51 or 52 plays. It was very, very even, and neither team was really doing a great job with establishing or sustaining drives in the second half. Here's the second half. So first of all, let's see. The Joe Mixon injury was at the end of um let's see, the field goal. That was the second to last before in the second quarter, was it not? Whenever. Oh no, wait, okay, let's see. So in the second half, that's when Joe Mixon was injured. First drive of the second half, and then Tank Dell missed that nice pass from CJ after that. So it was punt in that series, punt, punt, field goal, punt, fumble, punt. And that's why you feel the way you do, even though the Texans are 2-0. That was just inept offensively in the second half, whereas the defense poured it on. And honestly, right now, I'm not concerned about the offense just because of the wealth of receiving talent and CJ Stroud and Joe Mixon, as long as he's not too banged up. I think there's going to be something there. The defense was the one I still had big question marks about after last week when they let up so many big plays. The 7 sacks are really nice, but I think the fact that they got 7 sacks by blitzing a lot and didn't give up anything on the back end. One thing too, I asked people if they said this in the broadcast because I wasn't watching. They had Derek Stingley traveling with Moore, and that meant that at the beginning of the game, especially, that Kamari Lassiter was playing on the left side for the first time that I've seen him play on the left side. Derek Stingley played, other than when he tracked Amari Cooper last year, he played almost exclusively on the left side last year. So that was a swap, and I thought that Kamari Lassiter early on, especially being a little bit late to come up and close on some routes early, I was a little bit nervous about that, but it all evened out as the game went along. The blitzes helped a lot. The fact that they were able to get Caleb Williams on the ground, where Caleb rushed, he probably ended up rushing for like 30 or 40 yards, right? But it was never, well, he had the one big run there at the end that was scary. But other than that, I felt like they did a pretty good job containing him. Let me check some of your comments. I apologize. Bobby's about to piss me off. What the hell is going on? The pass protection, and then I got to go back and watch, but I'm wondering just how much they had to have tight ends chip and running backs chip and stay in because the pass protection was so abysmal. They started, they condensed a lot of the formations. It felt in the first half, it felt like it was going to be wide open, where you got Joe Mixon on a jet sweep, which was just a really nice way to get to outside zone. I thought you saw some creativity. And then in the second half, it just turned into a whole lot of batting the hatches, and versus a very good defense. But I always like to think, okay, well, what would these last 2 games have been like if those were good quarterbacks on the other side of the ball? Because then you can have a good defensive effort, but you're still going to give up 21 points, or you're going to give up, like last week, the defensive effort wasn't good enough. Well, and the blocked punt. But that was a higher scoring game. So these 2 games, you're 2-0, but it doesn't feel like it's a team that's really slam dunk asserting their authority, despite the fact that physically, like down in and down out, if you look at the Bears offense, the Bears averaged 3.1 yards per play. They were down at like 2.5 going into the fourth quarter, where the Texans averaged 5.1 yards per play. 134 yards passing for the Bears, 235 yards passing for the Texans. Rushing was about equal, 71 yards for the Bears, 75 yards for the Texans. That's a nice little trend right now. The Bears averaged 3.2 yards per carry. Last week, the Colts averaged 3.0 yards per carry. That's a really good run defense if you can keep holding them to 3.1 yards per carry on the season. They'll face better rushing offenses than they did in the last couple weeks, but this is potentially a really, really good. This is potentially a really good defense. Some of the hits, the pass rush, some of the plays that they were making, and in cleaning up, I think some of the mental errors from last week. That's a really good sign. I think Henry To'oTo'o is, I would say, at least 47% better than I thought he was going to be. The first inkling that I had that he might be a different player this year was just when he was out at training camp. The first couple of weeks, I was saying, I don't see him as athletic as these other guys. And then he started picking it up. And out there now, athletically, he looks completely different than the guy who was playing last year. So I like that. Is Alshire going to be suspended for swinging? You know what I wish they had done on the broadcast? I wish they had shown the actual hit on Caleb Williams, because it seemed from my vantage point and with all my bias that it was a clean enough hit, but I don't know. So I don't have a clue. By the way, thanks to BetUS for sponsoring this video. If you go to BetUS right now, you can get a 150% bonus on your first deposit up to $2,000. I came out on the short end of this one, but I'm doing well on the year. I had bet the Texans at -6.5. The Texans continue to I was okay last week because I had locked the Texans in at -1, whereas this week I was not so lucky. But they're super fast with their payouts. You get your own personal account manager. It's a good deal. Go to betus.com and use the promo code YouTube150 to get that offer. 150% deposit, 150% bonus on your first deposit, and it's a great website. So let's see. Okay, they did show it. Okay, I missed it. I must have been typing in notes. They missed this, so it was clean and inbounds. The people on the sidelines should have been angry at Caleb Williams and nobody else. Let me be sure I hit some of my themes. I have a 6 a.m. radio show, so I don't know how long I'm going to go. I'm in a closet at KHOU right now. They're probably waiting for me. Jason Bristol probably wants to go home to his family, but he's waiting for me because I told them the people needed me. Damn it! I'll do my D'Amico Ryans and highlights reactions tomorrow, but damn it, people need me. These are my Texans versus Colts notes, Seth. Those do me no good. Here we go. Bears versus Texans. I'll say it again. I was wrong about whether or not they should be aggressive versus Caleb Williams. D'Amico blitzed, at least at the time that they showed the graphic. It was the most D'Amico had ever blitzed since he'd been coach of the Texans. The last time they blitzed a lot was in the Ravens playoff game. Didn't go so hot. Didn't go so hot at all. This time, I think, A, they're facing a rookie quarterback, and B, they just are better suited to blitz, both with the pass rushers and with the coverage behind them. So to blitz as often as they did, but to also do a good job of limiting the big plays, I think that's a step up over last week. Caleb Williams, I thought I'm torn on him because he did some really impressive things scrambling out of trouble. I thought he was efficient for what they were asking him to do early on. At one point, he was averaging like 3.9 yards per attempt. So it wasn't like it was an impressive effort, but he was accurate. He had completed at various times like 75% of his passes. But ultimately, I think the decision-making under duress behind a bad offensive line, those guys were just getting destroyed. And the blitz, sometimes Caleb was ready for it, sometimes it wasn't. But sometimes you got to understand you're in a close game and you can't just be heaving the ball up like you were back in the old Big 12 or Pac-12. You're not even in the Pac-12 anymore. I paid the Pac-2 is whatever the hell it is right now. Laramie Tunsil, I don't know what to tell you. I don't know what to tell you. Nico, I probably, this is something I do. Nico has become such a steady force that there have been times, in both these games where I've almost like ignored Nico completely, and for God knows what reason. I think in the first half, he was everybody's spirit animal. He was the guy that looked like he has really since the Browns game last year, but especially the Colts game at the end of the season, where he's just gonna do whatever it takes to get extra yardage, to bulldoze his way to a first down on the scramble drill, where from up in the press box, the way I'm watching it, it looked like the defensive end that was chasing CJ Stroud was about like he was a mythical beast that was about to consume and swallow CJ whole. And CJ rifled that off to Nico Collins in the scramble drill. And it's just getting to be almost routine. There were some plays in the broadcast. Which one was it? CJ threw back across his body and Collinsworth was gushing over it. And I was like, and I watched the replay. I was like, oh, yeah. Oh, yeah, that's what CJ does. Yeah, that was an impressive pass. And on a night where, again, statistically, it wasn't gaudy. Third down, I mean, the Texans were 4 for 14 on third down. Ugh. The Bears were 6 for 17. Texans had 15 first downs. The Bears had 15 first downs. This was not a pretty second half of football. The penalties, the poor guy that got knocked out on the sideline, that made it last even longer. I'm not blaming him. I'm just saying there were multiple things in that game that made everything last. Eberflus challenging things that had no chance of being overturned for God knows what reason, just trying to make it longer, trying to make me pull an all-nighter. I hope Eberflus gets. I don't want to wish that on anybody. Officials in this game were absolute garbage. Plus 120 yards. Swallowed CJ whole. Okay, I got you. Hip drop. Oh, yeah. Okay, good call. The hip drop on Mixon should have been called. Thank you. Oh, yeah, I had asked you guys to point out the bad calls. Okay, good call. Good call. Thank you. Thank you. I hope that any of you who gave me an answer didn't leave the stream yet to see that your thank you was given. The hip drop on Mixon should have been called. The one thing I wonder about that, remember I did a video on the hip drop. There have to be 3 elements. There has to be one of them is twisting, okay? And I don't leaving your feet to drop while twisting. That's the one I wonder about if they'll call that twisting or not, but it sure looked a lot like the thing that they're trying to avoid. And I hope Joe Mixon's all right. Let me look for this. So thank you to everybody else that was pointing out various penalties. Crappy piece together O-line, flip that switch and balled. I think Caleb is going to be good. Yeah, I think we saw him build on last week. I think that he was where last week it looked like he was trying to get rid of the ball too quickly, but not always just because he was being pressured last week. This week, I thought he looked like he was more into the timing and the flow and the rhythm of the offense. And that's without having a rushing attack supporting him. He does have a really good defense on the other side of him, obviously. Obviously, that's a good defense. If it's not a good defense, then I'm more worried than I'm less worried than I should be. But I think that's very, very fair. Wonder why they can't open the roof when it's 90 degrees outside and then a perfect day and they keep it closed. Pretty warm in there tonight. Wonder why they open the roof when it's 90 outside and then a perfect day and they keep it closed. Pretty warm. So it was warm. You lost me on there somewhere. I'll tell you honestly, I think the biggest reason that the roof isn't open, aside from the heat and sun stuff that people complain, for one, people just, no matter what, 50% of the people are going to be upset. And when the roof is open and it's hot, the 50% of people who are upset that the roof is open also tend to suffer more heat stroke and everything than the people who are upset when the roof is closed. So I think that's at least a little part of it. The other part of it is during the day games, because it's got that old Texas stadium effect of having a smaller than roof-sized hole. It's a sunroof that it screws up the TV broadcast. And then you get that really annoying shadow into bright light to where you can't see, like from the preseason games when you couldn't see what was going on in God's shaft of sunlight. Why is no one congratulating our kicker? I don't know, John. Because I'm a jerk, all right? Just come right out and say it. I'm a jerk. Kaimi Fairbairn's a machine. Kaimi Fairbairn can take a pic of any woman in my family. If she so chooses, it's her choice. Just know that I won't object. Yeah, I don't care. You're an absolute stud and a legend, and you deserve, especially kickers. It's tricky with the Ring of Honor, but man, especially when you've got a when you've got a punter that when you're more nervous about your punter punting a routine punt than you are your kicker kicking a 57-yarder or a 59-yarder, you might have issues. I apologize to whichever one of you was arguing with me about Cam Johnson the other day, because yeah, I miss Cam Johnson right now. Kicker's going to be testing Kaimi. Who's Larry? I don't know. Kaimi's been such a good kicker for so long, it's just normal. Yes, it's true. Somebody was talking about Laramie. Did I say Jeremy? Please tell me it was not me that said Jeremy Tunsil. Fuck. It's been such a long day. You guys know I do the pregame show out in the heat. It's taxing on me. Taxing. Jamie is the reason we're 2-0. I'm guessing that's Kaimi or Laramie. It's not Laramie at this point. Kaimi is awesome partly today because he had to kick 5 yards further because Laramie had a false start. He's got the most since 2018 or whatever it is. Yeah. I'm not gay, but I would French kiss our kisser. I'm glad that I found that. I'm not gay, but I would French kiss our kicker. You don't hear as much about French kissing these days. Probably because these kids have moved on to just whole different level stuff to do with your tongue. Yeah. Doing enough, but our passing game doesn't look explosive. Too many field goals, 100%. And you can't even blame it on the red zone per se. The biggest red zone issue they had really in this game, when it could have conclusively won the game for him, was Cam Akers fumbling and otherwise doing some good things in the game. But that's not ideal. It's not perfect. Somebody used that as evidence that he's not as good as Dameon Pierce. I seem to recall a Dameon Pierce fumble or two a couple years ago down on the goal line. I might be wrong on that, but running backs fumble. The big Dell drop hurt my soul as well, my friend. Yeah, the punter isn't that good. Surprised we let the last one go. I hear you, man. I know Tank doesn't catch every ball, but yeah, that's still not a normal game for him. Yeah, I felt bad even on that one throw to the sideline that wasn't as perfectly placed as CJ typically does. I found myself disappointed that Tank didn't make that play, and I don't even know if it was possible or not. But we've become spoiled by Nico and Tank, and now Stefon Diggs making those plays on the sideline like they do. You add that one to the more egregious drop right after the Joe Mixon injury, and that's where everything just fell apart. Yeah, the O-line, not pretty. I don't want to go and pick on any one individual. I do think that there were moments where I could see that Patterson and the guards were not on the same page in the run game. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean that it was Patterson's fault, but the cohesion, the teamwork, and the timing and all of that, it was just a little bit off. That one sack given up where I think it was Dari that was in pass protection, kind of wiped out the blitzer, but in doing so allowed a pick for on Patterson. So there's just a lot of mayhem in there. It felt more like the Texans O-line of yore than it did of yesterday. Early in the season is like an extended preseason, but the wins count in the end. Yeah, one thing I was complaining about today was just all this rustiness around the league offensively and sloppy football, I think. This isn't me being a grumpy old man about it. It's a direct offshoot of the limited preseason. Not just the schedule the way it is, but the fact that teams aren't playing their starters. Honestly, I'm watching the Bears and I'm like, are you telling me that Caleb Williams couldn't have used some more time in the preseason? It befuddles me. I don't understand how rookie quarterbacks can't benefit from playing in the preseason. and seeing something closer to actual NFL speed and maybe going against the starters at times. I don't get it. Should we be asking for Bobby Slowick to be fired? Um, no. I like how CJ Stroud wins. Sorry, John. I don't mean to use that tone of voice. No, I don't think so. The the pass protection, aside from having your starting center out, is something that the individuals need to take responsibility for. Some of the blitz pickup now, is Chris Strausser not doing a good enough job coaching the blitz pickup, or is it just the individuals? Perhaps. I do think they had things working in the passing game if they'd had time. And when they were trying to set up some things deeper downfield, CJ just didn't flat out didn't have the time. So no, I think if Bobby Slowick got fired today, I think a lot of teams would pick him up almost immediately, especially if they have a young quarterback. I mean, that's really whenever you get frustrated with Bobby Slowick, I would say, do you think that Bryce Young would have been better off if he had been here last year? And I think he would have been. And maybe I've got, a filter that I can't see past just how good CJ was and everything. But no, I'm not upset with Bobby Slowick about this. What the hell would Bobby Slowick be hired for? And that kept wrapping around Kenya when he would try and go block with Patterson. The other one, Shaq. Okay, yeah, the interior line games. Shaq Mason again today. He left the center to go out and help the tackle as the defensive tackle from the other side was coming on a twist. They seem lost on the interior games. It's frustrating, and I would be a little bit more. I would excuse the young players a little bit more, but it's odd that Shaq Mason is making mistakes like this because it's not like an athletic thing or anything. It's just bad football. It's crazy. All right, I got to see what Alvin said because I saw somebody say it was a good point. Last week the 2 minute was bad as well. It's like they have no interest in scoring a touchdown and are happily playing for a field goal, or even worse, running plays with no intention of scoring to kill clock. Somebody educate me on this because I want to say that this is a common complaint of the Kyle Shanahan tree, that Kyle Shanahan operates like this and other guys in his tree do a little bit, that it is they soak up a lot of clock and maybe are just trying to set up for either a field goal or a touchdown if they have the shot available to them. But then oddly, they were running a play with 5 seconds left at the end of last week's first half. And even if it had been even if the clock had been dead and not running the way it screwed up CJ, like that probably would have been the last play. So I don't know what they were doing there, unless they're going to try to draw him offside. It was just all weird. It was all weird. Our D line is dirty. Only going to be better when. Oh, Autry. That's a great point. Vaporous, Vaporooz, like underoos, but vapes, like underwear made out of vapes. Do they make like THC pouches the way they make nicotine pouches now? I'm curious about that. If they do, it's not going to change anything for me. But I'm just curious about, does it work? Would it work that way? Why wouldn't they have them already? They must, right? Okay. Probably. Yes, they do. Okay. Oh, yeah. That showed up on my feed the other day. It was some kind of, it looked like it was, yeah, it was Canna pouch or something like that. When Joe Mixon went down, that changed everything around late in the game. It was the first drive in the second half. You know, my concern with that isolated KCX. My one concern about that is that eventually Cam Akers got going. They got going on that drive in the fourth quarter. And that was a blend of maybe, and if you have a criticism of Bobby Slowick, you might ask, all right, why not get Dalton Schultz involved earlier? I'll go back and rewatch and see exactly how much the tight ends were chipping or involved in pass protection as the issues mounted throughout the game. But also, as I leave you with this, that is a very good Bears defense. I think they are legitimately and genuinely a really good defense. And as much as I would have loved to just really, really torch Tyreek Stevenson, I think he's a good young player. Jalen Johnson obviously is good, and they do some things that confuse people. Early in the game, you're wondering like, why is Jalen Johnson on Cam Akers or Dario? Was on Mixon? Why is he on Mixon? It's because they're really good at shifting looks and disguising things, and it makes things confusing. So I thought that was a gritty defensive performance by the Texans versus a really gritty defensive performance by the Chicago Bears. Defense is just getting as exciting as our offense. Yeah. The play on Cam's fumble was just a perfect hit on the ball. It's unfortunate. I mean, that was a really nice drive. Cam was doing well on it. I'm worried that Slowick couldn't draw up any zone beaters for Steph. Yeah. They had zone beaters. I think the tough thing about the Bears is, it's not like Madden. Most teams are playing zone to man, and those guys are really good at pattern recognition. And it's not as simple as like, oh, all right, we'll just run 4 verts versus this or what have you. And especially when the pass protection was starting to break down. CJ was able to, before the pass protection really started to break down, he was carving things up pretty well. But yeah, that's a legitimate, and you can say anything offensively tonight, and I'd probably say, all right, that's a legitimate concern. Play action to set up the deep ball. Brandon talking about the Bears. Bears D was crazy tonight as advertised. And I think Caleb Williams was better than he was last week, even though on the evening wasn't really all that impressive, obviously. But thanks for hanging out with me. Listen to Sports Radio 610 in the morning. It's 6 a.m. I'm going to try to get to bed by 1, get a tight 4 hours of sleep. Maybe go to pick up one of these cannabis pouches that you guys are telling me about. And thanks to BetUS. Next week, I'll be sponsored by the product we were talking about. But thanks to BetUS. Awesome. I'll do my reaction to the highlights tomorrow. I've got kind of a crazy day. I'll do reaction to press conferences too, since people seem to enjoy those. Awesome, everybody. Enjoy the victory. 2-0. All right. Always remember, keep perspective on things. 2-0. Ain't bad. Worst things to be in life. You could be a loser.